under attack. Fire! 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 Lord, yeah. I'm Mrs. Brown, Mrs. Brown, Mrs. Brown, Mrs. Oh, Lord. I'm Mrs. Brown, wanna hold right now. Yeah, no. I'm Mrs. Brown, you're too wicked. Hey. I'm Mrs. Brown, you can't hold right down. Lord, under attack from friend and foe. From Mrs. Brown and Co. Under attack, Lord, you're firing from her both side track. Mama, under attack from Heckle and a Jekyll. Them have a bigger time plot. Under attack, Lord, you're firing from her both side track. Lord, yeah. I wanna make two. I do want to make four. I couldn't take the deal that they were giving, so I walked right over their door. Now Mrs. Brown, them a frown. Her golden goose is gone. She planned a secret war. Said she wanna even the score. Lord, yeah. I'm Mrs. Brown, Mrs. Brown. Oh gosh. I am in a sheepskin and holes in sheep clothing. Big about the wool. You think you are the big about the wool. Playing like the big about the wool. What's on the wool's got? Don't you know I'm the zookeeper? About the wool. You think you are the big about the wool. Playing like the big bad wool. What's on the wool's got? Don't you know I'm the zookeeper? Sigh. Why you running up your mouth all over town? Claiming to be the toughest fool in the town. Chatty mouth, boy, you think you're bad. I'm the worst nightmare that you ever had. Yeah. Lord, jealousy applies so high. Envy wanna touch the sky. Who are you to judge me? Back are you a bad boy, you can't bite me. So big bad rule. You think you are the big bad rule. Playing like the big bad wolf. Well, I'm the wolf got. Don't you know I'm the zookeeper?
All right. Good evening, Dominicans. Those of you in the region, those of you further afield, especially those of you who are here in Dominica, this blessed rock. It's always a pleasure to be in your company each and every time. That is each and every Sunday from just about that time. Folks, it is already 5 minutes past the hour of 6 o'clock, and you're now tuned into the Civic Vibes program right here on Facebook and on YouTube. These are the two platforms that the program is being streamed live from this evening. It's always a pleasure, as I said, to be in your company each and every Sunday from just around that time. And yes, we are getting ready. We're getting set. So we just give you that 5 minutes just to get yourself ready, prepared, comfortable, that is, so that all important program that you're about to listen to in just a while, so that you can be educated. Some of you may not know certain things that our special invited guest, Mrs. Annie Edwards, is going to share with us tonight. Very informative, I can tell you that. So please make yourself feel very, very comfortable at this time, and please share that information, share the live information as we are moving on. Folks, this evening, it is the 26th evening of November 2023. And so it is the final Sunday in November. How time flies, huh? And so, yes, this 26 will be no more after a couple hours this evening. And we are going to have a very candid conversation with Mrs. Edwards here this evening. We all know Mrs. Edwards in Dominica. She's no stranger to Civic Vibes at this time, no stranger as well to us in Dominica. But we know this program, it is global in nature. It has a global reach. And so just as soon as Mrs. Annie Edwards open up her conversation here with us, she will be telling those of you who don't know her just yet, just a bit more about herself before she gets into the meat of things here. All right, so without further ado, folks, let me move across to the co-host of the program, Brother Alvin Thomas. Good evening to you, my bro, and welcome.
Yes, good afternoon, Lofty. Good afternoon, my brother.
Yes, indeed.
A pleasant good afternoon to you and our many listeners, persons who have already logged into the program, both at home and abroad. It's a pleasure to be yet again another Sunday afternoon to have a conversation. Should we say a round table, a coffee conversation, a juice conversation, a kubuli conversation, a water conversation? Just hang around and discuss some of the issues that affect us as Dominicans at home and abroad. And like you, it's indeed a pleasure to have with us again this afternoon Sister Annie Edwards, who is an expert in her own particular field. A lot of times when, some of the politicians like to speak, they speak like they've been the expert. I heard recently the Prime Minister sounding like an expert on a particular document, the EU ACP document. And when you had certain archbishops made certain comments, he said, no, I'll talk to them. Maybe I'm interpreting that now. Maybe they don't understand what they read. So I'll explain to them what the document is all about. But certainly, Ms. Edwards is an expert in her particular field. And we're indeed happy to have her here this afternoon to have a conversation as it relates to Dominica. Our environment is very important to us. So I look forward to having that conversation with Ms. Edwards. So again, a pleasant good afternoon to everyone. Hope everyone is having a beautiful Sunday afternoon. And as we normally do to anyone celebrating birthdays, anniversaries, whatever that is, we want to say congratulations to you and anyone celebrating a death in the families. We just want to extend our condolences on behalf of Civic Vibes. So again, Lofty, a pleasure to be here.
Indeed. Alvin, thank you very much, my brother, for your opening salvo here. Indeed. Let me now go through the live feed persons who are there with us. We have persons like Mali Ostri, good evening to you. David Joseph, Clarolyn Warrington, Theodora Anthony, good evening. Usila James, Justina James says, I am with you, Lofty. Day Jojo, good evening to you in a very, very special way. John Alfred, Daphne Yuseb, my friend in Canefield area, good evening to you at this time, Daphne. Garnier Deluge, Eliza Louise Gomes. We also have Bryna Francis, Rosa Robinson, Cecilia Bedminister, Juanita Prince, Usila, Roy, Jan Joseph, good evening to you in a very special way as well. Juanita Prince, Adelaide Paul, Adelaide, good evening to you. Adelaide, I missed your call earlier today. I'll be calling you sometime later this evening or most likely tomorrow morning. All right, sorry about that, Adelaide. Olivia Esprit, Ziska Hanans, yes, good evening to you. Gertrude Abraham Deja, Wellington, yes, Wellington Williams, He's here. Marshall Lawrence. Brother Ashby Scotland is in as well. Marlene Shillingford, Natalie Sunwin, Marvella Defoe, Earl Francis, good evening to you. Anthony Simon. We have here Ayana. Yes, Ayana Donfrid, good evening to you as well. That's a new name I'm seeing here. Thanks for being new on the live feed. Ayana Donfrid. Dana Philbert Peterson, you're also there. Good evening. Ian St. Mary. Brother Earl Bruno, good evening to you, militant brother. Owen Prosper, long time to see, long time to hear, brother. Simeon George, Karen Joseph, Cyrus Raphael, Pablo Paul, Carol Olivachi Bruni, brother Dave Bertrand, Alistair Irish, good evening to you as well. Adi John, Stephanie John Baptist, Judith Cochran, my brother, indeed in the Wesley area as well. You're tuned in as well. We also have your Viva Mamo as well, Henrietta James, Victor James. Alvin, any more names you see?
Yeah, we have Marcellus Lee. I think he's out there in St. Kitts. And we have Gardner Deluge. We also have Judith Cochran. We have Alistair Irish. I think you called Dave Bertrand already, Owen Prosper.
We have Julie Polidor signing in as well.
Yeah, Julie Polidor, that is correct. Stephanie John Baptist, Ayana Donfred.
Ivinia Joseph tuning in now. Good evening to you guys.
Joseph. Yes.
So Alvin, the house is already full and persons are there waiting for a very, very interesting program.
Yes, certainly.
Compliments our special invited guests.
Certainly, by all means, yes. The house is full. The book is filling up very quickly.
Yeah. All right. So folks, without any delay, let me now move across to Annie Edwards, Mrs. Annie Edwards. Good evening to you, Annie, in a very special way. Annie, as I told you before we officially started the program, this program is global in reach, global in nature. And so there are some persons who may be out there listening and watching at this time who don't know just who is Mrs. Edwards. Can you just give us just a short, a short intro, just who Annie Edwards is at this time before we move into the meat of things, as it were.
Okay, so good evening, Lofty, and good evening to Mr. Thomas, and also to your
Alvin is good, Annie, for our session. I'm good with that. Okay. Annie.
Yes. Good evening, Alvin, and good evening to your many listeners. As was said before, I'm Annie Edwards. I am a former public servant. I worked in the public service for over 30 years. I rose to the position of chief physical planner. But I am a land use planner, physical planner, but my area of specialization is in natural resource and environmental management. I have a master's degree in that, and I also have bachelor's degree and a diploma. So tonight, the focus of the presentation is on our natural resource, which is the rivers that we so dearly love in Dominica, and how we can manage them effectively so that they'll be available for future generations to enjoy. So Lofty, now I'm just going to share my screen so that visitors can view my presentation.
Yeah. And whilst you're trying to set up that viewing of that screen or that sharing of that screen, as it will, let me just give the folks out there the numbers that they can call. These numbers are 245-2396. Again, I repeat, 245-2396 or 615-9470. These are the two numbers that will get you into the program sometime later, about the 7 o'clock hour, just in case you have a comment or question or suggestion. All right. These are the two numbers. They will be plugged into the live feed sometime later in the evening. We have some other folks joining here. Ziska Sira, Indira Telemac, my brother Indigenous Bushman, you're there as well. Verna McGlaw, Angela Paul, Ivinia Joseph, we call you already. And so, many folks are just tuning in at this time. So folks, thank you very much. Tonight's discussion, just to sort of preempt Annie in terms of her presentation tonight, is going to be very informative, as I said. So please, if you need, get a pen, pencil, notebook, writing pad, whatever it is, to take some notes. It's going to be very pictorial as well, a lot of graphs, a lot of images. So, you know, you will not be left behind. They say just sometimes showing pictures, it adds to the much needed that goes into the information. All right. So Annie's going to show a lot of pictures tonight so that you can follow up on in terms of grasping all that she's about to deliver here tonight. So Annie, thank you. Alvin, you want to say something before?
Yeah, I know I don't want to. I know Annie has her approach and she's going to do just what she's going to do, and we are excited, looking forward to that. But I just wanted to ask Annie, just before she do that, just a quick synopsis, and I know she's capable of doing that. Just tell us in terms of Dominica land mass. Dominica is considered so many square foot. What percentage of that is in forest and what percentage of that is in just land when we're talking about our river? And so just so people start painting in their mind what we're looking at. And I know you're going to most likely go into it, but just to give us a snapshot that when we're talking about Dominica, we're talking about X amount in forest, covered forest, and X percentage, which would consider maybe land or river, blah, blah, blah. Just to kind of paint in our mind so we can relate that when you're doing the presentations.
Well, in the past, I know before Hurricane Maria, we had about 60% of our land space covered with forest. But right now, it may be down to maybe 40, 50 somewhere, because I know we lost a significant amount that time. But Dominica, as most of you all know, is a very mountainous island. A lot of it is very rugged, so the entire interior is almost impenetrable. As a result, there's a lot of forest mass covering it. But as to the exact figure, we'd have to get that from the forestry people or the people who study through satellite imagery. But it's still significant.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Annie.
Yes. Okay, so tonight I'll be presenting on sustaining our rivers, and I'll be explaining what we call a watershed management approach using what land use planning. As I go forward, I'll make it easier for you to understand. But sustaining our rivers, because right now the cry is that our rivers are undergoing serious degradation due to a lot of activities, whether they are natural or man-made. And there's a lot of concern in Dominica, and I think this is one of the reasons we're having this program. I must say that this program was supposed to be held on World Rivers Day, but at that time, we were in the height of the load shedding that was taking place.
Yes, I remember, quite remember, yes.
So the aim of this discussion really is to demonstrate why a comprehensive approach must be adopted for the sustainability of our rivers. Now, in this context, sustainability means meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So this is the definition that has been put forward by the United Nations for natural resources. There's a big drive internationally to sustain what we have so that future generations can inherit it and enjoy it as we are doing right now. And that, in essence, is what sustainability means within the context. There are other meanings for it, but that's what it means right now. So we are talking about taking a watershed approach to the management of our rivers. And as I go along, I'll explain to you why that is necessary. So I just have a small picture here to explain to viewers what exactly is a watershed. So the watershed, as you can see there, is that entire land area from which the waters that make up that river flow. So you can see that the rivers flow from a high elevation, the mountains. They come down through the valley, and a number of tributary smaller rivers join as the major river flows down to the sea. This is a simplistic view, but that in a nutshell is what a a watershed is, that entire land mass that is drained by a river. The river flows in the lower section of the watershed. Now, within a watershed, there are a number of uses. So you cannot, when you think of where a river flows, you cannot just think of the river in isolation. You have to think of what else is in that river valley. And it is these different uses that tend to impact the river. So in that picture, which is very simple, you see farmland, forests, homes, roads, factories, runoff from the mountain itself. So what in a nutshell it says is that a watershed consists of all the different land uses, all the activities that take place, and all these activities in one way or another impact the river. There's another type of watershed that we call the complex watershed complex. And what we see there is that it's still a one watershed, but there are 3 different rivers coming from different points of the mountains. They don't converge, so they reach the coast in 3 different river mouths, you would say, as we say, Dominica. So that you call a watershed complex. And as we go on, you see that we have both types of watersheds in Dominica. So the main point I want you to grasp right now is that watershed management is very important in Dominica. We boast, for instance, that we have 365 rivers. So basically the entire, as you will see in a while, the entire country is made up of watersheds. Everywhere you live, everywhere you work, you are within a watershed. So this map is a map of Dominica for those who do not know. And and Dominica, every color you see here indicates a watershed. You have the largest, there are 35 watersheds in all, and 13 of them are watershed complexes, as I mentioned before. The largest one you can see there is in yellow, is the Layu River watershed. We know that the Layu River is the longest river in Dominica. And this mass is, you see in yellow, is the Layu River watershed. You also have other major watersheds like Roseau. You see basically the entire Roseau Valley forms a watershed. You have Makushri, Indian River. So each different color, as I said, indicates that it's a watershed. Now there are 2 major watershed complexes. We see on the East Coast, one called Mont Lassus, that is where the Carib territory is. So in that area, you have several small rivers coming from the mountains, but they don't join. Also, Petit Savan complex, there's a major one in the south, which we can never forget because that is where the disaster took place. So later in a few slides, I'll be zooming onto 4 areas so that you can have a closer look at what's happening in the watershed. And remember, as I said, the whole intent is to show you that, we cannot just look at rivers in isolation. A lot of we are looking at rivers and we are saying, boy, our rivers are drying up, people are destroying our rivers. But to really manage rivers effectively, you have to look at the watershed because it's the activity in the watershed that is affecting the river. So as I said, every community in Dominica is located within a watershed, and this is critical for the development of Dominica. I don't know if you have any questions, but I could go on still. The second point we need to be clear of is that watersheds are threatened by both natural and man-made disasters. So it's not all man-made. There are some natural disasters that we know about. For instance, Hurricane Maria is very recent in our mind, Tropical Storm Erica. So what are some of the issues and problems that are affecting our watersheds in Dominica today? First of all, as I said, natural disasters. In the satellite imagery, which was taken, the image from the satellites in the sky, that was taken immediately after Hurricane Maria indicated that there were about 10,000 landslide scars in the entire island. Now, the landslide scars are the scars that are left after a landslide takes place. And because they were so evident, the entire country was totally devastated. These scars could be picked up by the satellites that are orbiting, and it shows that there were over 10,000. This work was done by the University of Twente in the Netherlands, and they sent down that imagery to the planning department. So it's actually available at the planning department. And
what's the name? What's the name of that university, Annie?
University of Twente, Twente. It's in the Netherlands.
Thank you.
They over that period they worked very closely with the planning department. And that itself, so immediately after the hurricane, you would drive around and see these large landslides starting way up in the mountains, and nobody lives in these places. So it's obvious that these are just natural, that's a natural impact of a disaster. So this is what we call natural phenomenon affecting our rivers, because they occur, a lot of them occur in the source of the river. Other effects that are affecting our rivers are what we call some damaging farming practices. So you have people cutting down trees on slopes or farming on steep slopes. You have lack of soil conservation, such as terracing. You know, when in the early stage, years long ago, especially when the estates existed, estates were very common in Dominica. A lot of terracing. The picture on to the right, which shows something like contours, it's what you call terracing. The people farm along the slope rather than just slash and burn. So as the rain falls, instead of just running down the slope, it would be collected and drained slowly. So this is something we no longer see in Dominica. We also, in growing up, used to hear about windbreaks, especially during when the banana industry was king, as they said. The farmers would plant their trees in between the banana trees, because banana, we know, matures in 9 months. So they would plant more permanent trees. But now it appears that that is not so prevalent. A lot of the farming taking place is more short-term crops. And this is something that is really affecting our water sources. Yes, other things are like overdevelopment in
Annie, just before you move a little forward here, please, just let me interject there 1 minute, please, if you don't mind. Crop rotation, for example, how would that be negatively affecting the rivers we're talking about? Crop rotation and intercropping.
No, it's not negatively. These are conservation measures.
Oh, okay, catch you. Okay, I had you. Okay, I thought you said something else. Okay,
so
cool.
These are, I said lack of soil conservation.
Okay,
measures.
Cool. Yeah. All right, point taken.
Then you have also development in sensitive areas. Even, I would say, we grew up in an era where we never really saw large rivers. You know, in a lot of cases, some of the streams had started to dry up, and even the planning department is guilty of, giving permission for people to build close to waterways. But with the event of Tropical Storm America and then Hurricane Maria, we realized that this practice is something that is negative, because both to the life of the people, because during these storms, we have noticed that most of the deaths that occur in river valleys where people have built right more or less within the river valley, that took place a lot in Point Michel. So that encroachment on our rivers and our streams is also an issue affecting the river. The river does not have enough room to flow when it overflows, and that is a big problem. Then contamination from pesticides. There are some factories also that dump their waste into the river. Animal farms. People also dump in some places the garbage, soil. human waste, dead animals. Dominic, yeah, there's a lot of people think that the river is a good place to just dump anything. So the point I'm making here is that, yes, there are natural causes for the rivers being, losing the quantity of water that they have. But there are also a lot of practices of human beings that are affecting not only the size, the quantity of water, but also the quality of the water in the rivers. Okay, so our watersheds, they are threatened by both natural and man-made activities. I don't know if at this point I should go ahead, or if there's any question. Should I just go on?
Yeah, you could continue. So far, you're doing good. Continue.
Okay. So at this point, I'm just going to zoom in to 4 parishes so that you can get a kind of bird eyes view of what I'm talking about when I'm saying that we cannot just look at the river in isolation. For instance, the Rosa, we cannot just look at the Rosa river mouth or Lai river mouth and say, the Lai river is being destroyed by this activity, that activity. The whole intent of this map is to make you interpret a map and look at what activities are taking place within the watershed and how they could impact it. The first map we have on the left is the map of the parish. I did them by parishes so that it would be a little easier. This is the parish of St. David. St. David is located on the northeast coast. The north of the map is where there is a word Mont Lassos. That is where the Carib territory is located. So the extreme north of the map is where the Carib territory is located. It's called Mont Lassos complex because, as I said, there are cases where you have more than one river within the watershed, but going straight. They don't join, they go straight to the sea. So the top one is Mont Lassos. Now the blue lines you see, these are the rivers, and there are some green spots there, and these green spots indicate where farming activity is taking place. So, for instance, in Mont Lassos, we know in the Carib territory, there's a lot of farming taking place, and you can see that this farming is taking place along the river, the Blue, which is the river valleys. So, if we see at any point that rivers are drying up in the Carib territory, one of the things that should be looked at is the farming practices of the farmers in the area. The bigger the one a little further down to okay, I'll go right down to the south, Rosalie River watershed. That is a very interesting one. It's a big river. We know about 3 rivers. So it's 3 major rivers converging to form, there's a smaller one further down, but they converge to form the Rosalie River. In the interior, there's a dark green spot. This is actually a section of Mont Trapito. So the river originates from Mont Trapito National Park, which is really good. So the source is protected. But as you get out of the river, immediately you see that there's a lot of farming taking place along the river valley. A lot of green spots. This indicates farming practices. So what it means that if you are, for instance, going to look at Rosalie River, one of the things you must look at is the farming practices of the people in the interior of the river. They might be farming on steep slopes. They might be doing a lot of deforestation. So this, in a sense, would affect the flow of the river. Then there is Bellefield, which is other one in the central area. This river is Cassibruce village is located at the mouth of that river, and we know recently it has been undergoing a lot of flooding. We might say it's the road construction or something that's going on, but Bellefield is a very large watershed. And one of the things we notice here is that there is it does not originate from for instance, from Mont Trapito National Park. So that means that all the land in Bellefield is privately owned. this may be one thing they would need to look at. This land that is all privately owned, is it being deforested indiscriminately? What are the farming practices and so forth taking place? The other on the right, this is the parish of St. Patrick, that is the southeast of Dominica. We have to the extreme south, you have the Pishley River, which comes out to form the Geneva River. Two branches converge to form the Geneva River. You can see that there's a lot of farming practices going on there. And some of the rivers originate from Belleville-Chopé. So what is going on in Belleville-Chopé? There's a lot of development. So what I want the audience to see is that a lot of times we look at one point of the river, but as you go, when you take a land use planning approach, you do your map, you identify all the different uses, it might tell you a completely different story. One thing also we have to notice is the black spots that you see on the map. All these black spots are landslide scars that occurred during the hurricane. So all these come together to form the 10,000 that were indicated earlier. Then there's a Petit Savan complex towards the south, Petit Savan. That one is an interesting one. It's, as we said, it has about 3 or 4 small rivers. They don't converge, but they are all in one watershed. And if you notice, there are a lot of landslides. Now, the people of Petit Savan might have thought these things were because streams, but if you have a sudden gush of heavy rains has occurred, these small ravines which originate in the mountains just, swell up and cause destruction, which obviously is what happened. And then you also have Point Mulat. Yeah. Sorry. Then this is the parish of St. George, where Rosa is located. The Rosa River, its mouth is where Rosa is located, but it originates all the way up in Loda. And there are several branches which form that river. There are a lot, if you notice, a lot of black spots, so that means the tributaries flow through some steep areas where a lot of landslides take place. So all these activities in that area, farming, housing, and so forth, would be affecting that river. You also have the Sibuli on the right. You have the parish of St. Joseph. This one is to the south. The area to the south is the Layo, the largest watershed in Dominica. Now, if you follow that Layo River to the source, which is in the northern forest reserve, you'll see that people are farming all the way up in that area to the northern forest reserve. They're right on it, and there's intense farming in this area. So any management of Layo River would necessitate studying of the farming practices. What are they doing? Road construction, how is it affecting the river? And that sort of thing. Then you have others. So the whole aim really, when I talk about a watershed management approach, is that rivers we have our rivers, we really want them to exist for future generation. But the only way that can happen is to have an approach which is comprehensive. And that is why I'm proposing a watershed management approach. You look at the entire watershed, what's happening, and then the different departments would then, if it's comprehensive, go in and conduct the activities that relate to the planning department would have to be responsible for where they build, where houses are given approval to be built. The farmers need to be regulated. There may be areas that need to be reforested because of the hurricane and the number of scars that exist. Yeah, that sort of thing.
Let me ask you, Annie, yes, if you don't mind. I know the last time you were with us and we were looking at the airport development, you yes, mentioned that there were 6 rivers or something in that area, if I recall. 7. Okay. Do you have
them were not rivers, some were small streams, but
right. Yes. Would you have a map of that with you? Not really? No, you don't have one?
I had it. I could find it here in a
Okay,
while.
if later on you find it, it'll be interesting to see, because like you said, there are 7 of them in that area alone.
Yes.
It will be interesting to see what kind of impact that huge development is having on those 7 rivers in that area. Because we know Woodford Hill River is up there and all these other rivers.
Right.
All right, thanks.
Okay, so to manage a watershed, we must look at it from the source to the mouth, because the activities within the watershed at any point could be affecting the river. And the negative outcome range from drying up of the river, flooding of homes, as we experienced during the hurricanes, and that sort of thing.
Annie, just
So
before you
before I go to the suggested approach, like explaining what watershed management is in detail, maybe we could take a break and maybe see if anybody needs to ask any questions.
All right, cool. I have a question though before we take that break. Annie, we saw when you were on the Roseau River in particular. Can you go back to that slide, please? Yes, yeah. Right. Okay, yeah. Seeing you mention all these little tributes that come together to basically what we see in Roseau finally that ends up at the the Bushiwi. We saw after, what was it? Hurricane, Tropical Storm Eric, I believe. We saw that activity, Annie, from a company, Agile, I believe. Well, I guess government approved, whereby that river, that Roseau River, was dredged from the mouth to go all the way up Loda area. What impact, Annie, as a professional, do you think that activity had on the river itself?
Well, I know that dredging, if you're doing dredging, it has to be planned, because the river has its own ecosystem. There's river life, and they need the stones, or the entire, ecosystem to survive. And also, the stones in the river break the velocity of the water when it's during floods and so forth. So yes, dredging may be necessary, but as to how it was done, if it was done in the planned the proper way, it's left to be seen. But it's not something that should be done without planning. It's not a situation where you should remove all the stones just to get the soil. It's something that has to be planned so that you don't destroy the use of the functions of the river, which include, as I said, breaking the velocity and also creating the habitat for the life in the river.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Planting trees along the riverbed, is that a useful or vital practice to sort of?
So I was coming to that as one of the solutions.
Right.
Yeah. So we continue.
All right. Well, let me just take a break. Let's just take a little break, folks. It is 6:45. The numbers to call into the program, they are at about 7 o'clock. That is, they are 245-2396 or 615-9470. Those of you maybe just tuning in at this time, we have in our company this afternoon explaining the watershed situation in Dominica and the importance thereof. Mrs. Annie Edwards, she's doing a very excellent job so far. So at about 7 o'clock, you can call in so that you can ask a question or make a comment based on what you are hearing thus far. Yes, Annie, at 7, we'll take that all important break. So like 15 minutes time.
Okay, so we go ahead.
Yes.
All right, so the suggested approach, as I said, is watershed management. Before I get into the watershed management, I'll just look at where we are in terms of legislation, policies, whether it's local or international. Dominica is signatory to a whole set of United Nations international environmental conventions. The United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC. That means Dominica has signed on to them. United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification and Drought, the Protocol concerning Special Protected Areas and Wildlife, International Plant Protection Convention, the Paris Agreement on Climate Change, United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity, Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety to the Convention on Biodiversity, Convention on International Trade in the Endangered Species of Wild Fauna, and the Convention on the Protection and Development of the Marine Environment in the wider Caribbean. So what it means is that Dominica signed on all these conventions, and Dominica has an obligation to respect these conventions and approve, enact laws to protect the environment. We also have local, our own legislations and policies. For instance, we know the Forestry and Wildlife is responsible for all government state-owned lands, forests on state-owned lands. And that is one of the issues that we face in Dominica. The Forestry and Wildlife Department is not responsible for private lands. It's only, so right away we see there's a big gap. Then you have the national, I'll come back to that in a while also. The National Forest Policy is very comprehensive. This is something that can be used to help us quickly regenerate our, our deforested lands. There's a REDD+ strategy for Dominica. REDD+ is a voluntary action for developing countries seeking to mitigate greenhouse gases. And then there's the Wasco water catchments, which are governed by water catchment rules. But the Wasco is only responsible for the catchment, the rivers or the areas where they have their water catchments, not for rivers in general. We also have the Physical Planning Act, which governs development. There's a draft National Physical Development Plan, National Land Use Policy, draft National Agriculture Policy, National Resilience Development Strategy 2030, Tourism Master Plan. So Dominica has all our laws, all our regulations. One of these things I must say about, these agencies that the United Nations agencies we deal with, there are some of them you can access funding from and so on, but you must have your policy framework, you must have your laws, your plans and so on. We do have some, but for watershed management, there might be a need. If you are serious about going that route, there might be a need for more legislation which is specific to that. Because as I said, the forestry department is only responsible for state-owned forests in the national parks and so forth. Now the planning department is responsible for development. Development takes place when you actually get approval and you start the work. But what happens in Dominica is that sometimes before people actually apply to build a house or so on, they may go and clear the land, cut down the trees. Sometimes, yes, all right. Sometimes, depending on where it's located, it might be in a sensitive area. I think I'll stop now. Okay.
Yeah, I need
All
some.
right, Annie, what
Go ahead,
we'll
take
do,
some water, wet your throat
we'll
while we
take a little
we'll wait on you.
Yeah, we'll take a musical break, and as soon as you are back up, then we can
we'll
continue,
continue.
all right? Yes. All right, Dominica, thank you very much indeed for your eyes and ears each and every time. We're having that conversation, that all-important conversation with none other than Mrs. Annie Edwards. I've been talking for the past, 50 minutes? So yes, we can well expect voice at this time.
Playing like
Trying to sort that out, and then we get back to her in just a bit.
gotcha. Don't you know I'm the zookeeper? Side, side, side. Boy, you running up your mouth all over town. Let me to be the toughest fool in the town. Chatty, chatty mouth, boy, you think you're bad. I'm the worst nightmare that you ever had. Yeah. Lord, I'm a jealousy fly so high. And we wanna touch the oh, yeah. Yes, 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 yeah. Give me some of your love. Yeah, yeah. Urban loving, urban loving, urban loving. Talking about my urban loving.
That's our brother Nasir Fontaine here. Good evening to you, my brother, and the entire family at this time.
Living on the street next door.
As we're discussing this evening the importance of our rivers in Dominica,
We're up on the 16th floor.
our pristine rivers, I must add.
Would have passed me by. Hold her head and would say hi.
So far, so good. Annie is doing an excellent job so far.
God says you lose
My brother Earl Bruno has commented thus far.
my mind.
Folks, in the next 5 minutes thereabout, we're going to take in your calls, your comments, your questions.
Urban
But I think Annie is back. We first back on track. Annie, are you there? Yes, can you continue?
Yes, I'm there. Sorry about that.
No,
Yes,
that's
no
okay.
problem. We
Annie,
understand that.
before, just to give you an additional break, Annie, before you move there, I have a question for you based on what you've presented so far. And I note all those legislations and policies, conventions you mentioned, and one of our folks on the line to ask. The question arises of enforcement. Two things, enforcement and integration. So we may have all this beautiful legislation on the books, but if they're not being enforced, then we have a problem. Also, I know you may be familiar with a study that was done back in 2012 by the Romilly Limited. And that was something funded by the Global Environmental Facility, GEF, and United Nations, along with the UNDP and government. And one of the observations they made was that Dominica have over 105 pieces of legislation that are used to manage different aspects of the environment and management of the various ministries and all of that. And even the one that you referenced on the National Forestry Policy, one of the areas that was mentioned that is a major concern has to do with quarrying. And I see you had that on one of your slides as an issue where we indiscriminately go and do quarrying. To what extent, from your experience back at the planning division, to what extent there is how should I say it, a coordination or an integrated approach between planning in particular and all of these other ministries that it relates to what we're discussing now? Maybe you come into it in a while, but I just wanted to raise it.
Yes. Okay. Planning plays a coordinating role. So whenever an application is submitted to planning, based on the nature of the application, other agencies are consulted. So if it's a development, for instance, in a forested area or an agricultural area or that sort of thing, then the planning officers or the planning department will work with these different agencies. As regards to quarries, there's a monitoring program going on now on quarries, and my throat is just giving up.
All right, Annie, just fix that for. We're gonna take that all important break now. We'll give you about 5 minutes at least to get it back on track. All right, we're gonna take that break at this time.
Drink a little warm water. That should help.
Those of you who can say a prayer out there for Annie's voice tonight, please do, huh?
So fine, I couldn't get her off my mind.
Because we need to hear much more of Annie's contribution tonight.
Through the night of
Seems as if the voice is throat.
You need to drink some warm water, Lofty. Some warm water will do the trick. No cold water. No cold water. Just some warm water. A little lemon juice give you. A little lemon.
So, folks, yes, we're going to take that all important break at 5 minutes to the hour of 7 o'clock. Your comments, your questions, your calls, we will facilitate them after that all important break. Alvin, you were saying something, Alvin?
No, I was just telling Annie if she could hear me then that she could do a little warm water, just a little lemon juice in there. That makes the trick. No cold water, just a little warm water and a little drop or two of lemon juice, and she should be good to go. That makes the trick. I'm telling you, that's an old school.
Take care, let Annie go and sleep on us after that drink, you know.
I'm an old doctor too, you know, Lofty. I'm an
nice suggestion. All right.
I'm sure some of my folks online will agree with me on that.
Yep.
I know Jeffrey Brisbane will agree with that.
All right, let's get that back to master control now, as it were, and take that all important break. Okay, Annie, I think you need to stop sharing your screen for us, please, at this time, Annie. Yes, just stop sharing your screen, and then as we take that break. Yes, thank you very much. Thank you.
Just save your children. Just save your children. Because they won't see your light without your love. Just save I and I from my Babylon, 'cause I won't see your light without your love. Too much propaganda confuse me, Rasta. 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 I need your light to see through the night. I need your light to see through the night. I need your light to see through the night. I need your light to see through the night.
For those of you just tuning in at this time, we are dead on 7 o'clock in Dominica and the rest of the region. We're having a very important conversation here with Mrs. Edwards, Annie Edwards, that is.
Territorial.
Talking about the importance of our rivers and waterways in Dominica. The numbers to call after that all-important break, they are 245-2396. Those numbers are on your screen as we speak. Or 615-9470. These are the two numbers to get your voice into the program.
To see through the night, I need your light. To see through the night, I need your
Ina, Scotland, saying that you're locked. Good evening.
the night. I need your light.
Unbreakable Corin Codrington Daily, you're also locked in as well.
Need your light.
My sister Marilyn B. Isles, good evening to you over there in the UK.
Just save your children. Just save your children.
Letitia Mills, you're there as well. Lady Go Bedminster, you are there as well.
Just save I and I from my Babylon.
Brother Clyde Gregoire, Karen Joseph.
Your love. Just save your children.
Brother Margel Dura, Miranda Williams, yes.
'cause they won't see your light without
Kendra Alexis, you're there.
too much propaganda. Confuse me, Rasta. Too much propaganda. Confuse me, Rasta.
Well, what Civic Vibes pride itself on for sure is no propaganda. Huh?
To see through the night.
Gloria McLaurin's Niski Alfred, Brother Jeffrey Brisbane.
To see through the night.
All these folks are tuned in.
To see through the night.
Brother Christian Volney, Benjamin Mardi, Brother Peter Carbon, Dorian Dorival. Brother Pat Corbett. And the host of you guys out there, good evening.
To see your light.
Brother McDonald Thomas, good evening to you as well in a very special way indeed. All right, folks, let's get back to the live panel here. Let's get back to Mrs. Annie Edwards, Brother Alvin Thomas as well. We are here. So, folks, it is your time now. Anytime you can call in right about now. I will facilitate your calls, your comments, your questions as we are moving on. All right, so yes. Alvin, Annie, we are back live.
Yes, I'm there.
Yeah. And Annie, if just a little reminder, get that chat for us with the rivers in the airport area. If you can find it. Be interesting to look at that.
All right, it seems as if we have some dead air at this time. Alvin.
Yeah, well,
yes.
I think the conversation has been going quite well. I mean, and you have given us quite a bit of information as it relates to our watershed and showed us certain graphics in terms of the outlay of the land and where the rivers are and the challenges that we face, particularly with the farming. And I think that brings to mind the whole question of planning, Lofty, which is critical. And that's one of the reasons why I'm asking her to show us that slide, because I remember the last time she was there, she mentioned in that area we have like 7 rivers or thereabout. And clearly, where no environmental impact assessments are undertaken, then we run the risk of that problem. And I think that has a much wider implication than just the mere fact of our rivers going dry. It impacts our whole sustainability economically and socially as a country, and our water. Bear in mind, our water is our oil, Lofty. This is what we have. And I know we are specifically looking at the whole question of the watershed management, but I'm concerned, very much concerned, and I'm sure many other Dominicans are concerned, as it relates to that Saudi Arabia love fest that they have with Dominica. Because and many of us on this program should be aware that one of Saudi Arabia's biggest challenge now as a country is the lack of water. Biggest challenge. So no matter how much oil money they have in their reserves or in their fund, they have no water. And like Dicey said in his song, water is life. And the next war that's going to take place worldwide is going to be over water. Because come 2030, as is predicted, several locations on this planet Earth is going to be in want of water. So clearly, if we do not manage our watershed properly and our rivers are compromised, and we're not able to safeguard that resource that we have and leverage it in a manner that is in our advantage, we run the risk of some either foreign government or enterprise coming in and exploiting that particular resource of ours. I mean, I mentioned the question of the quarry, and you see what's going on in a number of areas around Dominica where quarrying is taking place with the Gadagan and all these other companies that indiscriminately doing quarrying in even some of our protected areas, our national park areas, close to that. So I think it has much more broader implications for us. And I guess the question, which I'm sure all of us would be asking and have on our minds, is how do we as a people mitigate against those issues that she has raised? And how do we protect that resource of ours? We are still blessed with one of the few countries in the region that have a tremendous water surplus and water supply. And I think we have to keep our eyes on that and don't try to compromise and to lose it.
Yeah, true. All right, whilst we wait on Annie to get that through of us in order, let us touch some more folks here. We have Althea Rennie is listening and watching, Carolyn Warrington, Judy Charles St. John, Brother Bernard Aline, David Joseph, Manuel in Pierre. David Joseph is writing here, there are too many quarries being established throughout the country. This is having a devastating effect on the country. This is having a devastating effect, on our environment and watershed areas. With these quarries, we are having more and more runoff of silt into our rivers and saturation basins. Go
ahead, read the rest. Yeah.
This, he says, is the cause of much of the flooding and experience every time we have a measurable amount of rainfall. Yes.
Just to support what this scholar has written, and he referenced the National Forest Policy document of 2022. Mm-hmm. And on page 11 of that particular document, here's what they said, and that comes from the ministry, the Forestry Department. The other significant physical development seriously affecting the forest resources is quarrying. The number and size of quarries, tongue twister, has expanded over the years and has created a number of environmental concerns. The Physical Planning Division is responsible for granting approval for excavation, periodic monitoring of quarry operation, issuing recommendation and instructions to developers on further mining activities. So that's right in the document. So they've already recognized that's a major concern. And like the caller just said,
David Joseph, yeah.
It's a major issue that has to be addressed, yeah. Has to be looked at. But sure. I think Annie's back with us. Let's see what she got for us.
All right, while she's getting us already.
Okay, yes. Great. Go ahead.
So what do you want me to show you, that airport map? Or?
Well, yeah, with the rivers, in particular the rivers in that area, as it relates to the development of that huge project in the area. So we can kind of get a sense to, if at all, there may be an impact on the rivers in that area.
All right, Annie, just 1 minute there. Just before we go to that segment, let us just sort of wind up, Alvin, because that is their time now, the people on the feed. Let us just wind up in terms of their commenting.
Absolutely.
And then we'll get back to Annie with that exposure here in just a while.
Absolutely.
We have a comment from Karen Joseph. Karen Joseph writes, I believe that Dominica needs to strongly implement laws and regulations and enforce them with monitoring when it comes to the purchasing of land, especially farming land, in order to ensure that the rivers are protected. Annie has mentioned and showed how much farming is being done near the rivers, with apparently no laws or policies for privately owned residential and farmland to protect our rivers. She said here, we cannot expect the foreign commercial land operators to respect what we have if we don't do it to the fullest extent for ourselves.
Absolutely.
Right? And I agree with you, Karen Joseph, 150% here. Any more comments on the feed, brother Alvin Wissinia? Dave Bertrand writes, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I see David Joseph writes, the Rosa River was cleared off its boulders for financial reason. That which was done in the Rosa River was not dredging. In fact, it had more of a negative impact on the ecosystem and biodiversity of the river than anything else, whereby you had sand islands as well as wild vegetations growing in the middle of the river. This should never be the end result of dredging.
True. Dave Bertrand writes, thank you very much for your other comment, Brother Joseph, in terms of the Rosa River. Dave Bertrand writes, the Bellevue housing scheme is a sensitive area where houses should not be constructed yet. government took the unilateral decision to build there. All right. Letitia Mills says here, these information are needed at our schools for our students. All right, Brother
And then we
Jeffrey
have
Brisbane.
Marshall Lawrence asked a question, I guess, and he could maybe answer
Yes.
sometime. In reference to flooding, is it that most estates were or are the better areas to live? And I guess she's just asking from a, I guess he's asking from a perspective of planning. Where is a better area to build or to live as it relates to the flooding that takes place in some of the areas that she mentioned?
All right, just before she answers, Clyde Gregoire comes in with a very important statement here. He says, strange, this program is looking at the rivers in Dominica. Just a couple of weeks ago, I had a discussion with, what?
A resident.
Or
resident he
residents.
meant to put, I guess, typo,
Okay.
a resident. Yeah.
Residents along the river telling her, I noticed the Rosa River has a kind of silt that it was not there years ago. I was informed, however, that there is work going on in the forest where they are building a tram, and the work they are doing there is where this silt is coming from. The all-important question is asking, was the environmental impact study done before going ahead with this project? Yeah.
And then we have another question from Dave Bertrand again, saying trees are cut down and not replaced. What about planting bamboo or vetiver on the slopes to avoid landslides? So again, making a suggestion.
Yeah. Annie, can you?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes.
I hope my voice holds up.
Yes, let's hope so.
Okay, so this is a map of the airport. It doesn't extend. I didn't take it into the mountains, but it shows the different that I do.
So let me ask you, Annie, all this blue spider web like I'm seeing there, the blue ones, are these considered rivers and streams or branches of the main river, all these blue lines in the area? You're muted. You're muted.
Your mic is muted.
Sorry. The darkest one is Woodford River, which is the biggest in the area. All the others are smaller, but significantly quite a few of them start as springs within the community of Wesley. If you notice, Wesley is this yellow area.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look closely, you'll notice that these originate right in Wesley, the small ones.
Mm-hmm.
So that itself is a problem. These start as springs, but they may look like they are insignificant, but they are always, the water is always running through them.
So
whether they are small or big, they are all significant.
Absolutely. So in terms of I guess excavation work, because clearly you have to do a lot of excavation, you have heavy soil, a lot of soil, and obviously if that soil is dumped in indiscriminately and clog some of those rivers, then we have a problem. If it blocks the river, then that's where we have a flooding again.
Yes. And if you block them and you don't remember where they are, then you also have a problem, because these run all the time. If you come from Marigot or Wesley area, you'll be accustomed to a lot of springs. I guess we are the foothills of Mount Dablote.
Right.
So there are a lot of springs in Wesley, Marigot. I don't know, Calibishi area, they have a lot, but Wesley and Marigot. And these, you don't underestimate them. They never stop running.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But the largest, as I said, is Woodford Hill.
Woodford Hill. Yes, yes, yes.
This one, Eden River, comes out by the funeral home. That is a very deep one also.
Okay, okay. All right.
Yes.
Lofty?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just monitoring Annie's voice. I realize the voice is getting a little issue tonight. So Annie,
it's getting better.
it's getting
slowly.
better.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's
Okay.
why we won't make you do a lot of talking just yet. Just ease it up and
So-
just sip that warm water.
Okay.
But yeah, and the reason why I know, Annie, as we said, we're looking at, you're going to continue where you left out,
Yes.
and we're looking at the watershed. But the slide we just looked at is one of our biggest project in the history of Dominica. And it's one of the projects that's going to, in some shape or form, if not properly done, or the EIA is not properly done, is going to affect our watershed. So, and it's in an area, it's a very large arable land area, agriculture area. All of that comes into play. And I just think that for the purposes of our folks who are online with us, they need to pay attention to that as well. That is extremely important.
Okay. So yeah.
Yes, indeed.
So
So
the
Annie,
green
yes, you
airport and the because when I spoke about that, I drew reference to what's happening in Antrim Valley. It's underground water that is the cause of that problem. The sinking that's taking place there. This place has been sinking for a while because the underground water, it keep flowing. You don't see it, but it's there.
Right. Absolutely. Mm.
yeah.
Okay. So
All
should
right.
we go back?
Yes,
Yeah,
Annie,
we're good,
you
we're
can
good.
continue. Yes, cool.
Okay, so there was a question pertaining to the quarries I wanted to respond to. Yes, quarries are a major concern. Now, in the most way, there are about 7. Well, originally there were about 7 quarries along the west coast, from Point Michel to Coulibaly. And there was always a quarry in the interior, the one government owned. Now there's also a quarry, what we call a quarry monitoring program, where persons from planning, agriculture, environment, forestry visit these quarries, to look at their management practices, how they dispose their soil, overburden, whether they have their sedimentation ponds, because this is critical so that the water comes flowing from the quarry, whether it's used to wash the vehicles or any activity, wash the sand and so on. It does not flow it should not flow directly into the river. So we would go and make sure they keep their sedimentation ponds okay, make sure they keep their buffer from the river, everything. But recently I've been hearing about this quarry that is taking place in the heights of Cracker Hole. I'm not too sure whether I need to investigate whether they got approval. But I mean, this is far inland. That's right in the it's way inland. It's not close to the coast, so it has to be managed properly. And it beats me that a quarry will be taking place there, and they are not even talking to people, explaining to people, to the public, the landowners, and so on, what is going to be done, how they are going to manage the quarry. As somebody said, the siltation of the Pegua River is going to be immense, because that river, as you approach the river mouth under the bridges, is a very slow-moving area. This area is just going to be silted up. So definitely there should be strict management management processes in place to prevent siltation of the river. And normally in all the quarries we were monitoring along the west coast, you would just find most of them is a small stream, not any big river, but you're talking about a big river, one of the branches of the Pegua River. And it beats me that, these things we're in 2023. This is the government that set up the quarry monitoring program because there was so much outcry over the siltation and the lack of respect for the environment of the existing quarries. So in the past, if you remember, when you drive along, whenever certain quarries were processing, you'd see a big plume in the sea because the material was just getting straight out in the sea. We were able to have them put serious management practices in place to prevent that. Now you are locating a quarry right on a river, right next to a major river, and it's hush hush. And you know, who is monitoring this thing? Who is watching the work of the what the Chinese are doing?
Let
And
me
the government needs to take this seriously.
let me ask
Yeah.
let me ask you, is that approval for the operation of the quarry given by the planning department?
Yes, it's a planning. You're supposed to apply to planning. Quarrying is under the Planning Act, and planning and quarries. Quarries one of the types of development that needs an environmental impact assessment.
Okay.
You must have it, and you must consult with the landowners. And you know, there's been so much disrespect of landowners in the area already. Their pipe being disconnected, their water supply being connected so many times. I just find that the government is in charge of regulating quarries. They should supposed to set an example. Government is in charge of the airport development program. If you have a quarry as part of the whole exercise, you have to apply. You have to make sure that the process is being monitored, and you know, you cannot just let developers get inside and do what they want.
So let me ask you another question. There is a Mining and Mineral Act that I think we got of 1995.
Yes.
So as planning is responsible for giving the approval, how does that act come into play as it relates to quarry? How is it coordinated?
So before the developer start quarrying, he would apply to the Ministry of Agriculture, who was responsible for the Mines and Minerals Act, to get a permit to quarry, and then apply to the planning department for planning permission to actually do the quarry. So when you apply, you will supply, you know, your plans, layout of the area, how you're going to be, what management systems you put in place, and you know, the planning department is normally vigilant on the small developers. So if it's government doing the responsible for this development, they are supposed to be, you know, set the example. We cannot let anybody come to Dominica and do these things, because they cannot do it in their country. These things are regulated seriously in all over the world.
Let me ask you another question for, again, the benefit. In terms of the earlier on, you listed a whole series of UN and conventions and a whole bunch of stuff. Right, that we are signatories to. Can a citizen of Dominica, if situation like what you just described is taking place, can we register a complaint to those agencies? I mean, what is your knowledge on that? How do we? I mean, if the government doesn't, and they're signatory to all these environmental conventions and act, and let's say they're doing something that degrade the environment, can we lodge a complaint?
I guess we can do that. I don't know the extent of the reach of these international agencies, but we can lodge a complaint if it's. I mean, we can look at these different conventions and see which one is applicable and launch a complaint.
Yeah, because I'm saying that, Annie, to say, because we do a lot of talking. People say, oh, you talk. We talk.
Every time we start. Yeah.
And we don't take any action.
Further, man. Instead of we can talk, but talk further.
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying. Can we take some action? Unless we try it, we don't know. But if you have those whole list of conventions that you mentioned that they're signatories to, protection of the environment, protection of water.
What's the use of signing these conventions if you are just breaking
Exactly. That's the point. That doesn't
make any sense.
So therefore, we should lodge a complaint. We should organize ourselves in the communities and write a complaint to those agencies and say, hey, this is what's happening.
Yeah, why not? We could try that.
Okay, go. You can continue, Annie.
Okay. So I'm proposing what we call an integrated watershed management approach, which more or less is what I explained earlier. So in this approach, you would be looking at the environmental aspects, which is the water quality, pollution. So in that approach, you look at all aspects related to the watershed. Environmental, that's the water quality, biodiversity, pollution, geology, aquatic habitat. Then you look at the societal issues, the uses of the water, and then you look at the economic uses, whether it's manufacturing. So you take so you first conduct a study, maybe select one watershed at a time and conduct a comprehensive study. And following that, you just have a program of continuous assessment of these watersheds. Then you also need to have your legislation in place. And right now, I'm so sad to know that we had a environmental and climate change bill, which was created, like since 2015 or 16 in Romley, that same guy you spoke about was here, and up to now, this
Yes, that's right, Romley.
environment and climate change bill has not been passed.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if we are serious about the environment, we have to put our house in order. It may be necessary to have a watershed management bill so that watershed can have its own, management could have its own authority, which would look at all the different aspects. Later on, I'll show you an example of how this is being done. Because as I said earlier, there are a lot of gaps between legislation, for instance, planning and forestry and agriculture that people are able to exploit. Then once you get into the legislation and the institution, then you open up a whole set of areas where young people can be trained in engineering, research, water resource management laws, environmental law, and so forth, hydrology. So it's very important that we go that way if we are serious about water resource management and watershed management. And that institution now would coordinate the activity of planning, forestry, agriculture, DOASCO, and so forth, and champion the needs of the river. At this point, we need champions for Dominica. And also later on, you'll have things like watershed management plans being provided to advance the work of the unit or the authority. So, there are, as I said, so things like conserving right now, the forestry department is responsible for conserving the forestry ecosystems and also protecting the general environment of the river. So that watershed management authority would be responsible for overseeing that work. Then they would also be responsible for overseeing the work of the planning department. One of the important complement of such a watershed management plan would be establishment of buffer zones along the river. Right now, people farm right up to the edge of the river. People want to build right up to the edge of the rivers. This, with watershed management plan, this would be regulated much easier. And then also you'd have mitigation measures for climate change, guiding the farmers in their farming practices, and also things like the infrastructure, the communities, how susceptible they are to flooding, whether some buildings should be relocated. So it would be a whole management approach, which would take everything related to the watershed into consideration, and that would include both the life of the people, protecting the life of people, and protecting the rivers. Yeah. So one of the things I'll just move forward quickly before I want to look at approach. I'm doing a case study of the Coastal Zone Management Unit in Barbados. This is to show how you can manage your natural resource and it can become central to the whole economic development of your country. Barbados has beaches, we have rivers, but we can look at the approach they use to see how we can do the same thing for rivers. So a lot of people, you visit Barbados today and you see the lovely beaches, and you may think it was always like that, but in the 1970s, towards the end of 1970s, Barbados was undergoing a lot of coastal erosion, and which raised a lot of concerns for them. Remember, Barbados is out there in the Atlantic by, basically by itself. So with climate change, or with, I guess, the beaches were being destroyed constantly. And so the media started drawing attention to the issue based on what they saw happening on people's lands. The coastline was being eroded. And the government decided to develop a concept called the Coastal Zone Management. And the main issue was to address the erosion taking place of its beaches, and thereby benefit the tourism industry, because we know tourism is the main industry in Barbados. Now I wanted to look at the dates. So that's what's happening in the 70s. So in the government of the day in 1983, got funding to do a study of the coastline. That went on from 1980 to 89. And they set up a unit to be responsible for that. Then from 1990 to 1999, once they had acquired all their information, they had they set up a coastal conservation feasibility and pre-feasibility study, which they got funding for. And this led to the establishment of the Coastal Zone Management Unit. And from that unit, once that unit was set up, they started doing a lot of studies of the coastline, experimenting with structures. So in that picture to the top right, you have what you call groins and breakwaters. So if you fly over Barbados, you see a lot of these. So they set up these, and gradually, beaches started coming back. They looked at things like marine pollution. They said they did their coastal zone management legislation. This Leonard Nurse, the project was run, or the project manager was somebody called Leonard Nurse, and he was actually the lecturer when I was doing that course. And so he told us, it was a gradual process where they started learning, studying the issues and setting up their departments. And in 1996, they established the unit. Now, this study, what I want you to realize, this study started in 1970, late 1970s, and every 10-year period, they would do more on it. But one thing I remember him saying was that this project was totally supported by Bajans in general. So successive governments, when they came in, they just built up on what was done before, built up. And that is what we have today. That is why we have Barbados looking so beautiful with all its lovely beaches. So we might think that Barbados is beaches, but if you apply the same concept where you study what your problem is, back then they got funding from the IDB. But right now we are there's so much money out there for climate change activities and so on. To me, what we have here alone is enough to put forward a proposal to any of these big funding agencies We have what we call the Green Climate Fund. We always complain that we cannot get money, but there's a Green Climate Fund. But very critical for all these, to access these funds, you have your legislation in place. Even recently, I heard the representative from Dominica going to attend the climate change conferences, which you attend to every year, still complaining that money is not being given, but there's a Green Climate Fund. Why up to now we haven't set up the legislation to access funds for these things? These people don't give money in your hand, they set up their fund, you put your house in order, pass your legislation, set up your institution, and then get your staff to write up projects and access funds. And I see no reason why we cannot write up a good project and access funds to promote the sustainable development of our rivers, sustainable development of our watersheds. And, over a period, 1970 to now is 50 years. And within 40 years, Barbados has been totally transformed because of that. And, at this point, their motto or course or economy or lives. They realize that the beaches are important for their survival. So they have really pushed it. The young people are involved. And another thing is that along the coastline, they're integrated walkways and recreational activities. So it's really beautiful. But these things didn't come out overnight. So I see right now we are in where Barbados was in the 70s. And we need to lobby and give back, make this strong statement that we want our rivers back. Our rivers is our future, and just keep lobbying, keep talking, and the message must be heard at some point. So I think that's it for me.
Annie, it's interesting that you raised the last point that you raised, and
what's that?
If I'm saying it's interesting that you raised the last point that you raised, and I need to stick a pin where you says the media started drawing attention to the issue, and that's why earlier on I asked, well, in addition to talking, what can we do? So and I hate to put it as bluntly as that, but Barbados may be a real country, Dominica, sometimes not a real country in the way our administration behave. But let me just, in light of what you just said about the funding and all of that projects, which I agree with you entirely. Back in 2016, the IWECO, which is the Integrated Water, Land and Ecosystem Management in the Caribbean, that focuses on small island development states, in collaboration with the Global Environment Facility Fund and the UN Environment, implemented a project, a 5-year project in the region. And they did that as well in collaboration with the Caribbean Natural Resource Institute. And 10 countries participated. That program just ended somewhere in this year, 23, or they have a few months to go before it ends this year. It's a 5-year project. 10 countries in the region took advantage of that project. You know who they were? Antigua and Barbuda, Barbados, Cuba, the Dominican Republic, Grenada, Jamaica, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Trinidad and Tobago. Each one of these countries participated in that project where they look at situations like that. For example, in Barbados, I think one of the areas they look at was what you call it, that seaweed that comes on the beach very often. It's like a saga weed. And right, exactly. And I think Trinidad look at some mining and quarry area. How do we do better in that area? Barbados did it. St. Lucia did something else. The Sagaso weed. And 10 of those countries that I just listed, you know. And Dominica, which is supposed to be nature island of the Caribbean, was not a part of that project. Can you imagine that? So that is why when we're doing what we're doing on Civic Vibes, we're doing that not just for the purposes of talking, but for Dominicans to take action, for the media to continue to assist Civic Vibes. And that's why I asked the question. Let's shine the light, because if they don't want to listen to us locally, then let's go regionally and internationally. But I think you're absolutely right that we sit back, we allow these things to happen, and 5-10 years from now, we will not have a place they call Dominica.
There's another significant point I want to make. As I said earlier, the climate change bill has been sitting there for close to 10 years. Do you know that Antigua took that bill, tailored it to their situation, and passed it, and are able to get, funds directly from the Green Climate Fund? And if we need to access funds from the Green Climate Fund, we have to go through Antigua. So I mean, there was so much going on when the what was it? The Environmental Coordinating Unit under Lloyd Pascal was there. Because in law, you had low carbon resilience strategy. There was so many things going on, and then this whole unit was just dismantled, and replaced by a ministry of a Department of Environment, I think. And there's just nothing going on, nothing significant going on. We really, I tell you, over the past couple of years, we have lost a lot, because there was so much money available to access for climate change projects and activities, and I just don't know what happened. Something just happened. We just got derailed.
Well, it's a question where the government want the Dominican people back home to be dependent on them and don't want people to be sustainable. They don't want the country to be sustainable, and they don't want the individuals themselves to be sustainable, because a lot of these projects will enable the farmers, the fishermen, the different sectors in the society to become sustainable, to be able to earn for themselves, to do things for themselves. But that's not the thing. The only thing we know is to sell passport and have the citizens dependent on government. So they want a scholarship, they go to government. They want to pay their rent, they go to government. They want an apartment, they go to government. They want food, they go to government. And everything just falls apart. And that's why I said, when we're on this program, Lofty and Civic Vibes, it's not just about talking. It's not just because we want to come here and just say things for the sake of saying things. We want to be able to make this point so that especially our folks back home can make an impact, can take action and stop some of the things that are happening back home. I know right here in the States where I live, right here in Georgia, you had just recently there is a development that's going up in some area that the residents feel they don't want it. Those folks were there demonstrating like hell, got arrested and all, laying down in the middle of the street because they don't want the project to take place, because they feel it wasn't in the best interest of the community. And I'm saying it's time that we wake up in Dominica and take some action when it relates to those matters. Yes, we can continue to talk and do all the talking we're doing, but we have to take some action.
Yeah, we need to
Lofty, over to you, bro.
Yeah, whilst you were talking, Annie, in terms of the Barbados project, I take note that that Barbados is a country that, as one of our persons wrote on the live feed, I think it's Karen Joseph that said, Barbados, basically, they're working as a team. They're working with one aim and an objective. Dominic, on the other hand, is sad to say that when our governments in power, they do one thing. When they're out of power, there's another song they sing. This past Prime Minister of Barbados, I remember quite vividly, Mr. Barrow, Errol Barrow. He said in a communique when he was Prime Minister of Barbados that he's leading a team that is not looking for the now. He's leading a team that is that is looking like at least 30 years down the road. So things that they were doing then, the rewards would be reaped at least 30 years down the road. So here it is, what you said in terms of what they did in the 70s, and now they're reaping fruits. They're reaping the fruits. Dominica, on the other hand, is not like that. Governments come in and they do one thing or some things, and another government comes in and then do totally opposite. That is not in the direction that Dominica as a country should go. And so I just said that I would fit that in here as we're about comparing Dominica versus Barbados in terms of how they deal with at least the environment. Lovely beaches in Barbados, but as you said, Annie, they are so today because of hard work that went on then. Dominica, with its rivers, if we are not very, very careful, Annie, and the persons on the live, then we may end up losing a couple of rivers, which will be to our detriment in Dominica. And
Exactly.
so I just said that, let me just plug that in there as a fundamental point, that we as a people, not government now, we as a people, we must look into the protection of our rivers, and whatever way we can, we must raise our voice and even do in that regard. And it is 1:45. We have to get out in the next 15 minutes thereabout. But it would be remiss of me, and if I don't ask you your point of view, your perspective on a land filled with water. The Wasco we're hearing of late, they're asking for an increase. Your view on that? You're laughing.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's what is hard for me to think about. I mean, I just think it's really, I mean, I think what Dowasco has to do is really look within themselves and see whether there are other ways that they can operate. One of the problems they end up with after every hurricane season is their systems being washed away. I know, like, water resource management is a big thing in a lot of islands. Or St. Lucia, Jamaica. When I was studying, there were representatives from all these agencies studying also. People take water resource management very serious. Study their rivers, study their water, ensure that there's always water. Now, a lot of these, Jamaica, for instance, doesn't only focus on, they also tap a lot into their underground water. And, to me, that's something we should start looking at. Instead of, because the rivers are going to overflow and they're going to damage tanks every time. What about underground water? What about finding other ways to
Yeah. A matter of fact, just before the conversation started, yes, this afternoon, I was having a conversation with a senior brother in Dominica, and he basically said a couple of years back, maybe Alvin would sort of know what I'm talking about. There was this comprehensive plan that was basically handed to Dowasco, whereby Dowasco could be a much more beneficial, economical / as it were, company today, and not be on its feet as it were, groveling for asking for an increase right about now.
Can do much better than that. I remember talking to a Trinidadian once, and they were saying they pay $16, $17 for oil on them, because that is what they produce. Why should we in Dominica be paying so much water when that's what we have? I think the Wasco has to look at the practices and find ways that they could reduce their costs, reduce their waste, rather than try to, squeeze blood out of stone in Dominicans.
Yeah, let me just make a quick comment on that, Lofty and Annie and our listeners. In June of this year, just a couple months ago, a journalist by the name of Richie Farrell, that you're familiar with, I'm sure, Lofty,
Yes.
did some investigative work. And the title of his paper, or the work that he did, was Dominica at Risk of Losing Its Fresh Water Resource. That was the title of that research that he did. investigative work. And the subheading says, a call for the creation of a government-operated water management agency. And it's a very interesting investigative piece of work. I'm sure you can lay your hands on it, or those of you who are listening. But it's worth reading. And here's what he says there on when he, I guess he had interviews done with various persons, including our good own Afi Mate, who, as you know, has been championing that cause for quite a while and raising the alarm. And it says there, Dominica sole potable water distributor Dawasco has internal policies governing its operation. While the company is currently implementing elements of its water sector strategic development plan, more needs to be done to ensure its water reservoirs remain at full capacity. It goes on to say that company officials said that the water sector strategic development plan cannot be made public. You hear me? They are putting together what is called a water sector strategic development plan. And when asked about that plan, they told this investigator, Richie Farrell, that it cannot be made public. And we know that issue doesn't rest just with the WASCO, because we do not have an Access of Information Act like several of the other islands. But notwithstanding that, there's no transparency. So nobody knows something. You can't go to a particular ministry and say, well, what do you have as it relates to our quarry? What do you have as it relates to our rivers? What do you have as it relates to our water? He clearly said that that is not for you to know. That's none of your business. And that's why I'm saying that we have to be more proactive, Lofty. We come here every Sunday and we do these programs, and it's not just to give information. It is to provide information and to become more proactive. It is my suggestion that those of you in Dominica who are listening now should find a copy of that investigative report by Richie Farrell. It is Richie Farrell, dated June of this year, Dominica at risk of losing its fresh water. And in that document, they're saying that the WASCO has a strategic plan that they do not prepare to make public. And we must demand that plan. We must put pressure on the WASCO. We must find ways of doing it. There are several ways to skin a cat. And let me just say quickly, though, that when you talk about losing our rivers, it's not just a question of losing our rivers. It's losing a resource, because when we lose our rivers, we lose our water. And when we lose our water, we now don't become economic sustainable. And our social and a whole bunch of things get impacted. So it is not just losing the river. It is what effect of losing the river has on the country. And I think when we give this information, and Annie did a splendid job by showing what obtains, we need now to take actions in our hand. Some of you may be seeing the slide up on the screen that Annie has. And you see folks that are holding their placard.
These are Dominicans, though.
Well, yes, absolutely. Keep holding the placards. Add more to it. Keep protesting like that and say that we want action. Go before Dawasco. Go before the ministry. And we're not sending you to create war, you know. We're sending you to ask those questions. Approach the minister that's responsible for water when he's going up the financial step and say, Mr. Minister, we need a question from you. And keep on pressing so that we can protect what is ours. But when we stay quiet, nothing will happen.
All right. Thank you very much, Alvin. Indeed, it is 5 minutes to the stoppage time. And so we want to give Annie Edwards the majority of that time so that she can bring the conversation to a wrap very, very nicely. Annie.
Okay. I just want to just reiterate what Alvin said, that we need to take action. It's just our rivers are under too much threat, and we are not getting any response. People are talking about it. You see recently things like concrete plants are being set up on the river banks. These people, a lot of them are not, even Dominicans, they are foreigners. They have no respect for our waterways. So most likely they are sending this material into the water, the runoff from their concrete plants into the rivers. Recently, I saw we have this, not recently, we have right now this issue at Cabana where the material from the airport is being dumped and it's creating a serious backup of water, which may turn into a lake at Cabana area. We have not even investigated what is happening to the river mouth at Cabana. The river mouth at Cabana was a very, very popular picnic spot. People from Marigot and West people would converge in that area on holidays, you know, to have fun and so forth, because the river mouth was a really lovely area. It's low, it flows slowly to the sea because there's a sand spit at the river mouth of the river. With this dumping of this, I haven't even gone in that area because I'll be so disappointed at what I see. You know, but so the government is responsible. You have these developments going on, you must tell the people that they have, first and foremost, to follow the laws of the country. You are setting up a plant or you're doing an airport project, you must apply to planning, to the environmental impact assessment, and do part of the process of doing the environmental impact assessment is consulting with the locals. Now, if they had consulted with the people from Marigot and West, they would be told that that area is called Leach's Swamp. This area is Leach's Swamp. That all my life there has been a slow-moving river in that area. You don't see what's here. And from the time they started blocking up the area, the water just started backing up. So that is the reason why you must have consultation. Go to the people. What's so wrong in consulting the people? I just don't understand. Because these are national projects. When after we die and move on, you know, the younger generation will have to live with the consequences. What's the problem with consulting with people? I really don't get it. And the planning department puts so much pressure on the locals to comply. And then the foreigners are coming and doing what they want. And that is just not right. So in terms of, I will reiterate that we need to take stock of our rivers. Let people know, yes, it may look like a stream to you when you compare to the size of the rivers in your country. But it's what we have is we consider them rivers and they should be respected. And if you are building close to the area, you must leave a buffer, plant the trees, and don't direct any runoff at all into the river. You know, so it's really up to Dominicans to stand up and, you know, be vigilant and ask questions and, you know, question what you see going on and go to your PAL rep and go to the agency in charge and just continue putting pressure. And I think if people talk and put pressure, eventually the government will have to listen. But if we just sit there saying nothing, you know, the people just continue. And one thing I would also say is that when it comes to planning and applying to planning, one of the countries that most recognizes China, you know, the Chinese plan for 100 years and they don't break their plan. And they may have been doing certain things against the environment, but they are learning and they are very particular about planning. So what is going on, for instance, in the river thing would not happen in China. You have to follow the rules in those countries. So why do they think that they could come to Dominica and just do what they want and break our laws? And you know, this is wrong and it really must stop.
All right, Mrs. Annie Edwards, thank you very, very much indeed on behalf of the many, many folks viewing and listening at this time, and as well on behalf of Civic Vibes and the team there. Thank you very, very much for an excellent execution of the program, of your contribution rather tonight on the program tonight. Though the voice, you know, was giving a little trouble, but we sorted it out.
We sorted it out. So thanks for inviting me. I don't know what was happening with my voice, but we sorted it out.
Yeah, we sorted it out. Thank you, Annie. Yes. Thank you very much.
Excellent contribution, Annie.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, Brother Alvin, that leaves two of us, and he basically used up the 5 minutes. So we have like 1 minute each, and then we get out of the people's space.
Well, all I will say, Lofty, is that government has these resources in trust, okay? It's not ownership. They don't own these resources. They elected for a 5-year term and may get reelected again or may not get reelected, and all that resources are in trust. It belongs to the people of Dominica. And until such time, the people of Dominica understands that and do what it takes to protect what is theirs, then I don't think we'll get anywhere. So that's what I would end on. It's my hope that now that they have the information and he has shared it with us, I've shared some of what I have, you've shared. Now's the time for us to act on the information that we have.
Yeah, man. One to them.
What a fitting number to end on tonight, Brother Dice, entitled Water.
Everything in life that live and breathe need air. Water, gallons flowing daily to the sea. In the abundance of water in Dominica, we should just be paying a maintenance fee. Utility companies here too quick to punish the suffering public. If you can't pay your water bill on time, you will die thirsty or living stinking in your waterland. Hey! Water, water, water. Water is life. Who control the water decides who lives and who dies. You can cut my food, you can cut my life, but when you touch my water, you threaten my life. No one should be without water in this river land of Dominica. I have a thing against mapping and digital. I fashion with Domlek and flow, but I'm mad and I vex and I tired with our school.
All right, Dominica, that's it. I'm getting some very unfortunate news as we speak. But I just need to confirm those news, or that news, before I let the cat out of the bag, as it were. So Dominica, that's it.
COVID-19 lockdown, hundreds of customers online for water, risking their lives to pay their water bills on time. We know that your service cannot be free, no way. But Nova must consider the economy. Dominica can sell enough water to the region and the world over, and give Dominicans a breather, even raise the salaries of the workers and the managers. Hey! Water, 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 water is life.
So Dominicans, that is it. That is it for Alvin and I. Till we meet you, same time, same place next week, Sunday.
My food, you can cut my life, but when you touch my water, you threaten my life.
I'm hearing some very unfortunate news at this time.
Without water in this river land of Dominica, I have a thing against mapping and digital.
But if you know me very well, I like to confirm and reconfirm as it were. Huh?
Mad and she vexed and she tired. So I spoke. Yes, so I
So Dominicans, that's it. Thank you very much for your eyes and ears each and every time. Let's take the last verse from King Dice and then we're out.
One to them. Unemployed customers have to find the money for water, but they don't disconnect those in authority. It's not that the customers do not want to pay. No way. They just can't afford, but too proud to say. Yeah, this. They cut my auntie water, so she went to pay by the neighbor. Yeah, what the man tells she, they should pay together. To ask for water, not free. Hey, water, water, water. Water is life. Who control the water decides who lives and who dies. You can cut my food, you can cut my life, but when you touch my water, you threaten my life. No one should be without water in this river land of Dominica. I have a thing against mapping and digital. I bash it with Domlek and flow. Blue mad and she begs and she tired. We go as home. Yes, go as home. One to them.